So with that, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here with us today. This really is a community of amazing doers, and particularly for the elected officials in the room who, as we talked about earlier, stand up and do this every day. You know, we see you, and we know how hard you're working, and I just want to thank you. Thank you for your service. And for those of you who aren't elected officials, but who work in and around government every day to make a difference, thank you, and thanks for being part of this. So with that, it is my great pleasure to introduce the first person who's going to kick off this section we're going to do on the midterms. This is a friend and a colleague for a long time. Many of you know Simon Rosenberg. If you've been paying attention to Simon heading into the election, you will know that he was a beacon of hope for Democrats' chances against what most people thought was not going to happen. He has been getting a lot of well-deserved recognition for his prescience. I think it was Jonathan Alter who said that if Democrats do better on election night, then we expect Simon Rosenberg will turn out to be a genius. So the genius is with us, and we're excited to hear him talk about how he knew that was going to happen and what he thinks it means. So, Simon.
I think Pete Buttigieg is the genius of the day. Yeah. Anyway, it's great to be here with all of you. I've got a lot to cover because this is an important group and this was an important election. So let me just dive right in. And my remarks today are, I'm calling them, I'd rather be us than them. And in every way that we can think about that. What I'm going to cover is three things. What I think the big red wave mirage that happened, I want to talk about that, then what happened in the election, and then also some thoughts about what it means going forward for all of us. A year ago, I wrote Joe Biden's approval rating started coming down in the late summer of 2021, and it came down about 10 points from late August to late October. But the congressional generic, the question about are you going to vote Democrat or Republican, which usually tracks pretty closely with that, didn't move at all. And we stayed up by about 3 points nationally. And so I wrote a piece a year ago saying, this is meaningful because it means that what we're starting to see is that evidence that the Republican Party, by choosing to run towards MAGA, as they did after what happened on January 6th, was running towards a politics that had just been rejected by the country in overwhelming numbers twice, and that was potentially a huge strategic error. Usually when you lose elections, you run in a different direction. They chose to run exactly towards the politics that had just failed them and the country twice. And what I speculated then was that this was not going to be a normal midterm, that there was going to be a MAGA hangover, because you could be disappointed in Joe Biden and still have no interest in voting for them. And so what I wrote a year ago was that I think there were going to be three fundamental dynamics in the election. One was that the Republicans were going to have a low ceiling, that the embrace of MAGA was a mistake and gave us an opportunity. Second is that we were going to have a lot to run on because Joe Biden's been a good president and this has been a good administration. And third is that we have new capacity at in our field organizations and lots more money because of our grassroots, so that we were going to be able to mitigate midterm drop-off. And those are the three things that happened in the election, right? Is that they were too extreme, we've done a good job, and our campaigns got it done in the battleground. And so we have a lot now to build on, I think, as we go forward. But part of the story also is what happened with the media this cycle and the declaration of the red wave, which I was an information warrior fighting every day for 6 months. My Twitter feed got 100 million views between the middle of October and the middle of November because I was painting a different picture. And Amy Walter's going to be here today, who, by the way, who I love like a sister, but was one of the biggest proponents of the red wave narrative, is that and you should ask her about that, please, today, is that the red wave became the actual opposite of what happened in the election. It wasn't just a miss by the media. This was not like what happened in 2020, where there was, where the polling was a little bit off. The data was fine. It was the analysis that was wrong throughout the entire media ecosystem this time. And so part of what is important for us is that if I can sort of, let me bring up, I'm not going to go into all the detail, if I can bring up the two images that I want to, so this is in the declaration of the red wave, when we had lots of evidence there was not a red wave. The media in Washington declared, and look at this, Axios went even so far to say it wasn't just a red wave, it was a red tsunami, right? And created this graphic on October 23rd, my birthday, by the way. I woke up to this on my birthday, when there was lots of compelling evidence that this was not happening. And so the declaration of the red wave, we were all expecting the red wave. You know, we kept saying that we think the election is actually going to be a close competitive election. And let's now look at what actually happened in the battleground. If we can go to the next image and click on that. This is, as you will see, this is gubernatorial movement from 2020 to 2022. It's not the Senate. If we had the Senate, New Hampshire and Georgia would be blue. I just want to say, so just imagine that in your head. And what's important about recognizing what happened in this election is that this was not a nationalized election. There were really two elections. There was the bluer election that happened inside the battleground and some Democratic states, and then there was the redder election that happened outside the battleground. And why does this matter? What it showed is that when we go head-to-head with Republicans with our modern campaigns, we can control the information environment, which is a critical part of things that we have to talk about going forward as Democrats, that we can run the strong grassroots operations. The DNC made unprecedented investments in the battleground for midterm turnout, right? We saw that in the huge early vote numbers that we had, that we can control our own destiny in the battleground, that we can take on the right-wing noise machine and defeat it and make gains in a midterm election. We didn't just hold, right? We are stronger today in Pennsylvania and in Arizona and in Georgia and in Michigan than we were 2 years ago. This wasn't just a stay-the-course election. This was an election where Democrats actually made substantial and significant gains in the states that are going to, many of the states that are going to determine the outcome of the presidential election in 2024. Where there's also enormous overlap with the Senate races and many of the battleground House races as well. So I would argue today, when you look at this, right, that, and you also know, I'm sure this was covered in your remarks in the last 24 hours, that we've picked up 4 state legislative chambers, maybe even 5, depending on what happens in Alaska. Republicans didn't pick up any, right? So this was not just a decent election, this was an incredible election for us, given what we were not only given historic norms, but also given what we were told was going to happen repeatedly by everybody in the national media. And the real heroes to me of this story are just the regular grassroots Democrats who put their head down every day, raised the money, made their phone calls, knocked on doors, wrote the postcards, because they were scared about the future of their country. And they were the ones who led us to victory in many ways. When I started doing my optimistic new bluer election stuff over the summer, I started getting invited to all these grassroots Zoom groups all over the country, and I tried to do as many as I could, and I did dozens and dozens of these things. And this is also a new part of the Democratic family. There was a lot of new organizations and groups that grew up that are Zoom-based, right, that are not geographically based necessarily, of communities that grew up during COVID. And I saw in the passion and intensity in these meetings that I did the desire to make sure that we weren't going to give up on the election because they knew the stakes of the election were so high, that's part of what gave me strength to stay with the argument that we were making, which is, no, this is not a red wave, this is a close competitive election. And so I my final just thoughts about where we are now. Oh, one thing I want to say, the warning of this map is that and you have to be a little bit beware of some of the commentary that you're going to hear using national numbers, right? And using the exit polls and the national results, because we had a drop-off in California, New York, Pennsylvania. I mean, the 4 biggest states, we saw a drop-off from 2020. In California, Texas, Florida, and New York. And those distorted the national numbers, right? And so that's one of the reasons why Republicans won the national vote, while doing so poorly in the battlegrounds. And so a lot of the national data is not going to be actually reflective of this map. And we have to be careful about that. However, what my lesson is that when we don't contest the right-wing noise machine, they will beat us. And this is one of the biggest takeaways for me from what we need to do going forward, is that we have to become far more intentional about winning the information war every day, in every way that we can. We have to become louder, as I call it, as Democrats. You all know, being on the ground, how loud they are. They're unbelievably loud, and we're not loud enough. It doesn't mean we have to be like them, but we have to be loud in the ways that are consistent with who we are and what our values are, and take this information war that we're involved in much more seriously every day. I'm an old war room guy. I worked for Bill Clinton in 1992, and the war room wasn't about rapid response. It was about winning the information battle every single day, going on offense, defining your agenda, and when attacked, fighting back. And I think that we have to recognize that there is now incredible asymmetry in the media environment that all of you live in. It used to be talk radio, right? For those who are older, it was always, particularly in redder parts of the country, talk radio was always dominant. Now it's Fox and OAN and all the amplified stuff on their side. Is that if we don't stay loud, right, we cede the terms of the debate to them. So let me make a few comments about going forward. One is the Democratic Party is strong today, perhaps stronger than any time since I've been in this business. Our ability to do well in these last 3 elections under unbelievable adversity is an amazing achievement, and particularly the achievement of this election. This was a win for us, and we have to view it that way, given the circumstance of high inflation, Biden's low approval rating. The American people want us to fight for them. And I think that our campaigns are stronger. Their campaigns are weak. We raised in the House races on June 30th, we had a 6-to-1 cash-on-hand advantage over the Republicans in the battleground House seats. They had a 2-to-1 in our seats. They had a 2-to-1 cash-on-hand advantage in their seats. We grossly outspent them our candidates did, in every Senate race and every House race. And our movement into this digital age of fundraising has given us a massive advantage because we build better campaigns. They don't do GOTV. They don't run campaigns. They're reliant on these outside, PACs to do their business. That's not a smart way to win elections. I mean, we have a better way. And I think the Democratic Party tactically right now, and the way that we execute our campaigns, is far ahead of where the Republicans are. The second thing that you know so well about why we're stronger today than perhaps we've ever been is that the generational wheel is beginning to turn in the Democratic Party. We saw it with the incredibly graceful exit from power of the Democratic House leaders and the turning over to Jeffries and the new team in the House. But this dynamic of the older Democrats giving way to all of you and to the next generation Democrats is a central dynamic of the Democratic Party now. And it's an exciting one. And when I look around at the Democrats who won this election cycle and have survived now 2 unbelievably adversarial cycles in a row, when you look at the leaders that we have, Josh Shapiro, Gretchen Whitmer, Gavin Newsom, Jared Polis, right? Make your own list of folks, right? The battle-tested House candidates that have survived 2020 and 2022. I don't think we've ever been stronger as a party than the party that I look at today, who's going to carry us forward over the next 10 to 15 years. Third is that they're way out of position. Right? They've got the millstones of MAGA and abortion hanging around their neck that they're not going to be able to shake. These are things that create enormous distance from them, from the American people. We've now had 3 consecutive elections where MAGA has underperformed for the Republicans. And we all know that what's about to happen in their national primary is, despite the failure of their MAGA candidates all over the country, this is not something they're going to shake in the next 2 years. And the abortion issue is something that actually could be creating distance from them, from people all across this country for a generation to come. I mean, we've got to work and understand the opportunities that we have to continue to define them as being unfit and too extreme to lead the country. I think they're going to help us a lot, I think, in that regard in the next couple of years, but I think that opportunity is still with us. Fourth, and Deb mentioned this, is that we've got to get better about winning the economic argument with the Republicans at a national level. Since 1989 and this new age of globalization began that we all live in today, we've created 46 million new jobs in America. 44 million of those jobs have been created under Democratic presidents. We've seen 3 consecutive Democrats bring growth and opportunity to the American people and progress. 3 consecutive Republicans bring recession and spiraling deficits. we shouldn't be losing the economic argument to these guys. And this is a major priority for us going forward. And I think the investments the administration have made, as Pete Buttigieg, as Mayor Pete was talking about earlier, in chips and in infrastructure and in the climate bill, these are things that are going to be keeping us prosperous and moving forward as a country for a generation. We will probably have no greater set of things that we can sell to people about our understanding than the investments we've just made and seeing them play out in your communities over the next 2 years. This is an incredible opportunity we have to win the economic argument and go on offense on economic issues. I talked about getting louder. I think this is really, really important. This has to become a party-wide thing that we work on together. And I think, and part of what I was so proud of and what I was able to do sitting on the floor with my dog every morning, tweeting my threads out every day, my white bulldog who helped me as my writing assistant every day, is that when we have strong arguments, we can reach a lot of people. But we've got to speak to people the way they speak to now, right? All of you, many of you are much younger. You understand the transformation that's happening in the media. But getting louder, being aggressive, showing up, not letting them define the terms of the debate is going to be increasingly important. In many of your places, in states and districts, we also know we saw the emergence of never-Trumpers, right? People who are Republicans who just don't want to go along with MAGA. You saw Liz Cheney and Bill Kristol and other national Republicans create a permission structure for Republicans to leave the Republican Party, to walk away, as they always say about us. Well, this was really meaningful in this election. This played a big role, in my view. And those, Gretchen Whitmer's race in Michigan, for those of you from Michigan, she was endorsed by 150 leading Republicans a few months ago. What do we do with those folks? We need to create a place at our table for them. We need to think of our coalition differently now, where we bring in the never-Trumpers to an expanded Democratic coalition to continue to work to defeat MAGA. They're there. They want to be honored and recognized. I've done everything I can in my public work to make sure that Liz Cheney and Bill Kristol and all these courageous, patriotic Republicans who have been fighting MAGA get the recognition they deserve for the good work. There are people like this in your community. We need to hold them up and make them an important part of our family. And then finally, I think that we really do have to understand the nature of the battle that we're in today. And what I mean by, or the nature of the conflict that we're in today. And what I mean by that is that what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening with Elon Musk and Twitter right now, what's happening with, is this what Joe Biden calls this seminal conflict of our time, which is this battle between democracy and autocracy. And I love the way that Deb talked about this earlier, but this is the central fight, right, of our time. Particularly given how much we just did in the last 2 years to address many of the economic challenges that America's had. The central fight, and the one that we just can't lose, is going to be this battle over democracy and autocracy. All of us are going to be fighting this in different ways in the coming years, and I think it's important as we go forward to recognize that, our party was called once before, right? We rose to the occasion in the 1940s and throughout the Cold War to make sure that democracy prevailed over totalitarianism and authoritarianism before. This is perhaps our party's most important legacy and the most important work that we ever did. And we prevailed in that. And we built a global order, a global liberal order today that has created more opportunity for more people than any other system in all of human history. We have so much now not to just fight for, but to preserve, because we have to make sure that the people of the world and our kids are given the opportunities that we had. That's under threat in ways today that it hasn't been in a long time. And all as part of being a Democrat going forward, I think we have to recognize is that we're being called again. The Democrats, our leaders, are being called once again, as we were in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, and during the Cold War, to lead us forward during a time of unsettledness and where autocrats are rising all around the world. To me, that is an exciting and important project. It's what is the best of the Democratic Party, and I look forward to working with all of you to keep moving forward on the remarkable progress that we just made in this election. Thanks, everybody. Happy to take your questions. I've got time for 2 or 3 questions, I think. 2. Yes, ma'am. Yeah,
sorry.
please, yeah, where are you from?
I thought my mom voice would just carry on its own.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Christine Hunchowski, a former mayor of Parkland, a current state representative in the state of Florida. Hence my yes. So we need help. And I only say that because I feel like our state, and our Senator Loran Osley is here as well, is kind of becoming like a testing ground and for messaging and what will be the wink, wink, not MAGA, MAGA group, if that makes sense.
Yep.
They're really performing like MAGAs, but they're talking like they're not. Any thoughts, ideas, suggestions, anything? We need help. Thank you.
So, yeah, she knows that I've spent a lot of time in Florida over the years. And, you know, I'm not ready to give up on Florida. And I'm not, but I'm in a minority, I think. I think the next 2 years is going to be hard because you've got the two leading Republican presidential candidates coming from Florida, and there's just a pragmatic reality that it means it's not likely to be a priority for us. However, there needs to be developed a Florida project. I tried to get the DNC to adopt this in 2018, frankly, after the midterm, after that election, where we understand that it's going to take 10 to 15 years of investment and patience, but ruthlessness also, to get us back in the game. We can't give up on Florida. And until recently, you know, I was part of the team that brought, you know, my organization, NDN, introduced bilingual polling to the Democratic Party. We created the first Spanish language ads. We ran $3 million of ads in Spanish in 2004 in Florida. We won in 2012, we didn't just win Florida. We won the Hispanic vote and we won the Cuban American vote in 2012. So I was part of that whole effort. These are things that can get done, and we need to not give up. But I think in the short term, God bless you, it's going to be rough out there. But I will say this. I also want to say one thing, is that about DeSantis, and assuming that he can somehow slay Trump in the primary. I mean, we'll see what happens. I think we all have to recognize that who knows what's going to happen any longer, right? I mean, we were told a red wave was coming, and there was never a red wave, right? DeSantis is an extremist. And we can't for one moment allow anyone in our discourse and our discussion to do anything other than to connect with the extraordinary extremism of his governorship over the last 2 years. We shouldn't be scared of him, right? We face down MAGA, folks. He's pure MAGA. He's 100% MAGA. He made a huge error, in my view. He went far too, I think he thought he would succeed Trump, so he tried to become his heir. That was an enormous error. And they're going to do everything they can now to move away, right, now that MAGA's been proven once again to have been a failed political strategy. No, you're right. You were right about this. It's going to be the straddle, right? Well, we're too smart for that, right? We have the ability to remind everybody about who he really is. And he's as 100% MAGA as Donald Trump is. And it's something that we as a national party, my assumption is the National Democratic Party will be using a lot of money to tell people about this pretty soon, is my guess. Because there's no reason for us to let him get out of the box in defining himself in some alternative way, because he's as much a threat, he's as much a MAGA threat as any other politician in the country today. Yes, sir.
My name is Josh Moshe,
Yeah.
from North Dakota. Well, at least we were in Florida. We are in a super minority.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so one thing I've been thinking about, and I appreciate you talking about, we as Democrats have to get better at our economic message, because one thing we find, again, being in a super minority, is we get, quote unquote, caught up in the culture conversation, right?
Yeah.
So we're defending trans kids, we're defending women's rights to choose, all important things, and we need to do that. We're put in that position, but we're not tying those same people
Yep.
to that economic message. That
Yep.
They aren't focusing on the real issues of North Dakotans or Americans or whatnot.
So Bill
Can you
Clinton,
speak to that?
so when Bill Clinton ran in 1992, the origin of this, right, of this enterprise, right, we're all descendants from the Clinton campaign in 92 and the DLC, is that he ran as the champion of the forgotten middle class. I mean, that was the entire thrust of the 1992 campaign. He was the man from Hope who was fighting for the forgotten middle class. And what I'm really proud of, if you look back, I was part of that campaign, and I joined Clinton because I believed in the ideological argument he was making about the Democratic Party, and I still believe in it all these years, 30 years later, is that we were the party of hope and opportunity. We were the party of growth. We were the party of entrepreneurship. We were the party that put food on the table. We were the party that gave people a better life. And if we don't have that, we're not going to win elections. I mean, this is the central thing that we have to reclaim in the next 2 years. We're not going to be where we want to be. Deb, the admonition about how we shouldn't be satisfied with what happened in the election, we have to keep doing more. I agree with that. We can't be where we want to be as a national party if we're not on the side of helping people get a better life. And by the way, we are that party. And when you look at the national data over the last 30 years, there's been one party that's created growth and opportunity and rising wages and lower deficits and strong GDP growth. That's the Democratic Party. There's been another party, an ideological extreme party, that's created 3 consecutive spiraling recessions, exploding deficits, American decline. That's the Republican Party, right? And so, yeah, I will tell you right now, if I were in charge of the Democratic National Committee, is that creating that fundamental contrast between us being the party of growth, opportunity, progress, moving forward, and their party being the party of extremism. When they've been in power, they've led to economic ruin and American decline. Yeah, it would be helpful if every voter in the country understood that, but because it's true. And so part of my challenge to all of you is learn the data that my organization produces. I mean, many of the charts you see in the White House come from us, right, about jobs per month and all these things, right? I'm sort of the chief cheerleader, not just of the combatant against the red wave. I'm the combatant of the, hey guys, like we kicked their ass on economic issues. I don't know why we're not winning this debate. And this to me is the central project that the New Deal could take on, where in all of your communities, use my deck, build your own, go into the Chamber of Commerce, go into all these places, right, and start fighting this out. And we have the power in this room to change this conversation. We do. It's going to take time, right? It's going to take work. But the data's on our side. I mean, there's been one party that's created repeated progress for the nation and another party that's retarded it, right? And I think that we have to really become more comfortable making that argument at a national level. Certainly, I think you're going to see Joe Biden making that argument far more than he has been, because whether he runs or not, and we don't know, and if he runs, I'll be the first person to sign up to support him and help him win, is that he's going to be making these economic investments that we've just made the central. He's already done it, right? He went to Michigan, he's going to Arizona to talk about the plants. These are incredible things that we now have, right, that we can sell to people in communities to say, look at who we are, right? For kids who have associate's degrees in your communities, they're going to be employed for the next 25 years in whatever their trades are because of us. And we have so many arguments we can make now, right, to voters who perhaps are suspicious of us, about who we really are. We're going to have an enormous amount of ammunition. And I would just encourage you to learn the data at a national level, challenge the orthodoxy on this, don't accept the Republican frame that's been put on top of us as a party. And we got to wiggle out of this. But we need more national leadership in this regard as well to create the context. And I know I have to go, so I'm going to say my last point is that, to me, if I could give one bit, and I've been doing this full time for 30 years, is that if you're not on offense, you're losing in politics. It's the bottom line, right? And we all have to fight like our future and our families and our kids, are dependent upon our success, because they actually are. And so this is not a time to play safe. This is not a time to be, to send out press releases instead of going in people's faces. This is a time to go roll up your sleeves and get the work done, and to get it, and to try to start taking back the discourse in the country from Fox News and a radicalized right. The American people deserve to know the truth about what's happening to their country. And the truth is that we're the greatest country on earth. We have done more good for more people than any other political organization in all of human history. We're a remarkable party that has done so much good. We should be loud and proud about this every day. Thanks, everybody, so much.